Welcome back to the goddamn Evil Broomstick channel. Over the quarantine, I began watching the show Death Note, and I finished it now. This was my first anime show I'd ever seen. My girlfriend's been trying to get me into anime, and I didn't think anime was for me, but she sold me on this one because it had like a horror edge to it, and it did with like the character Ryuk, and the whole show, even the premise is a bit of a horror premise. I made a video when I was midway through Death Note about a week ago, and it was right after. By the way, this is just going to be my overall thoughts on Death Note, my review, my analysis, my everything, just my mumble-jumbled thoughts on Death Note, the entirety of the show. It's going to have spoilers in it. I'm going to talk beginning to end of the show, just what I liked about the ending, what I liked about the beginning, the middle, all that, whatever. About a week ago, I made a video, and I had kind of fallen out of love with Death Note. Like I said in that video, the first 10 episodes, I thought this was going to be my favorite show of all time. I was absolutely in love with the show, and then I had kind of fallen off around a time where Light and Misa just forgot that they were Kira, forgot about the Death Note. The show turned from a chess match between two geniuses, Light and L. The whole show, the first 10 episodes, was watching these two characters go after one another and, try to beat the other, and then they end up teaming up. Light forgets that he's Kira, and they end up hunting a whole new group of Kira, and it just became a little irritating for me when we were promised this one premise of the show, and then the show entirely flipped the premise on us and became about something entirely different that was much less interesting at the time. I did say in that review that I will hold all, final judgments until I see the whole show, see the whole picture. That problem arose many times where the show is going great, and then they do something that I hated, but then as episodes go on, I start to think like, you know what, I like the way that twist happened and the way it ended up turning out. I don't think this show's perfect. I do have a lot of problems with Death Note as a show, but I ultimately really love this show. I've been thinking about it every day since I finished it, and I'm actually gonna rewatch the show because now knowing where every twist and turn takes me, I do want to rewatch it, and I feel like I'm going to like it more this time. I think the show peaked in the first 10 episodes when it was at its simplest, when it was Light in his bedroom with the Death Note and Ryuk killing people, and L in wherever he was at in a hotel room trying to track this guy down. When they became friends and met each other and buddied up and Misa, it all slowly downgraded for me, but still, when I think about it, even all that stuff, I was still loving. I just think the first 10 episodes was like the Death Note masterpiece, and then it still became a great show. So if you remember episode 7, it was about, there was this detective, Ray Penbar, who was investigating Light because he suspected Light of being Kira. Kira kills Ray Penbar, and then his wife could have gotten Light caught much sooner if she was able to deliver what she was suspecting in her head to Chief Yagami. But you watch this entire episode and you just watch Light at work. You're watching him masterfully manipulate this woman throughout the entire show, and something he tries fails and he starts calculating in his head, what can I do, what can I say, and he talks his way through everything. And you see, that's the episode that you see how difficult Light is to beat, because the most powerful thing Light has over anyone is not a Shinigami, and it's not his connection to the police or anything. It's his brain. He is a straight up genius, and that's why he's so difficult, and that's why it takes L to finally become a rival for Light. That episode was beautiful. Even the ending of it was amazing. The way she walks off and then walks up the stairs to hang herself, the editing, that was the episode that showed just how tense and dark and dreary and dreadful and beautiful this show could be. The editing, the music in this show is so great. And the thing I love about the show especially, and look, I saw the movie recently, and I'm going to make a whole separate video about the movie. I watched the movie after I watched the show. Something the show did that the movie does not do. The show is slower, takes its time, and feels, in a sense, very mature. There's no explosions. There's no, action scenes. The majority of the show is just a series of conversations. It's a series of conversations with brilliant writing, and I think episode 7 is the best episode to just show, how well written this show is. I love the moment where L introduces himself at school. The tennis match between L and Light was very bizarre and was a very strange. I feel like that's where the silliness aspect of the show kind of got introduced. But then again, Ryuk was always there, and Ryuk's always silly. He's always just like chuckling in the corner, you know, begging for apples and floating around. Even when Misa Misa was introduced, at first I was like, she's kind of annoying, but I actually grew to really like Misa Misa, especially in the later episodes. But where I started to hate the show is where L finally had Light and Misa caught. He had him captured, and he was about to, you know, they were about to lose everything. And then they introduced this thing out of nowhere where you can just forget you have the Death Note, give up ownership, and then L had lost because it was this chess game between the two of them, you know, A and B, L and Light. And instead of, you know, a checkmate and them going at it, Light just cheated with this rule that was never introduced earlier. If they had introduced that rule that you could just forget the Death Note, I think I would have liked it more, but it came completely out of left field, and that's where L and Light became friends, which at first I hated, but it is kind of fun. It's a fun dynamic to see for a few episodes, and I actually really came to like watching them hunt the Yotsuba group and hunt down Higuchi, because I have a friend who's reminds me of Higuchi that is always like, things are going wrong and he's just frustrated and freaking out and throwing temper tantrums and fits, and it was just so funny to watch Higuchi. I really enjoyed him, and watching them bring him down, it's fantastic. And then the moment happens where Light regains his memory of the Death Note. And see, this is what I'm saying with the show, where it takes a turn and it makes you hate it for a little bit. Like, it made me hate it when I thought that it was no longer going to be about L and Light fighting each other. And so when Light regains his memories from touching the Death Note after Higuchi is killed, and he takes on ownership of the Death Note once again, that was a beautiful scene, and it made me realize that the show was consistently doing this thing. I feel like that was the first time they did it, where you thought the show was about something, and then it took this big twist. You thought it was about L versus Light, and then it took this twist, and it was about them two teaming up and them taking down the Yotsuba group. And I started to think, like, I don't like this as much, you know, is this what the show's gonna be about? But then you find out this was all a part of Light's plan, and then it makes you retroactively think about the episodes and realize, like, whoa, that was pretty genius. He planned this all out to forget it, then for the ownership to come back to him, and then that's where you're really seeing, like, the genius of Light, even more so than you thought. And that's why I want to rewatch the show, because, you know, those episodes where Light had forgotten about the Death Note, I was just, like, seething in anger that I'm like, it's not about L versus Light anymore. Now rewatching it, I would know, like, no, they're just setting up something bigger. Wait for the bigger picture. The moment where I think I truly hated the show, and I took a few days break because I was considering not watching the show anymore. And honestly, if I had stopped, this still would have been a fine place to stop. It's when L dies. I think L's death was the worst decision. The timing of L's death is the worst decision the show made, I believe. There's two main protagonists in this show, because even though Light in a way is the main character, I mean, Light's definitely the main character, he is the antagonist of the show. Light is the positive in what Light's doing. I mean, he's kind of single-handedly creating world peace, but he is, in a way, an evil-natured person. You could tell he enjoys what he's doing. He enjoys killing. He is a bit of a psychopathic serial killer, even though what he's doing is creating world peace and ending crime. He was still pure evil, and he was our main character, but we had two protagonists, and that was L and Chief Yagami, Light's dad. I think it was a major mistake for the show for neither of those two main protagonists to be there at the end, for neither of them to see the grand reveal and the death of Light and everything that happened. I think it was a major mistake. L wasn't there, Chief Yagami wasn't there, Misa Misa wasn't there. You know who was there? Matsuda, Aizawa. I mean, I enjoyed them both. I like Matsuda. I really, really liked Aizawa, I believe is how you pronounce it. But still, think about the heartbreak and just how much more powerful the series finale would have been if L hadn't died in episode 25 and had made it to episode 37, or if Chief Yagami hadn't died and had made it to episode 37. I think it was okay to kill L. The way they did it, I did not enjoy at all, because L had finally touched his Death Note. L was finally, this whole show, you want L. You like L so much. He's definitely my favorite character, as I'm sure he is a lot of people's favorite characters from the series. You want L to figure out that Light is Kira. You want him to crack it. You want him to discover the Death Note. You want him to learn about it. You want him to see everything that we've been seeing. And just as L gets the Death Note into his hands and he's on the verge of finding out everything, Rem kills him. And then they introduce Nier and Mello, who are L's successors. I came to really like Nier. Mello I always thought was just fine. But Nier I felt like was an apology for killing L. I feel as if they killed off, while I was watching it, I felt as if they killed off L, and then their apology for it was creating Nier, this copycat character of L. Nier and Mello were sort of the successors to L, and they were sort of under him. I like to think of them as his little brothers. And only working together could they finally bring down Light and bring down Kira. But the thing is, I think that all could have worked. I still think L could have died, and I think Mello and Nier could have teamed up together. Mello dies, and then Nier is the one to finally do it. Like, the youngest of the bunch is the one to finally take down Light. I think that could have worked, and I think it did work a little bit. They wouldn't have felt as much like replacements to L, and as much like they were trying to redo and copy L again, if it had been set up. If we had seen a scene before L dies of these two, of him with these two, maybe when he was younger, maybe a flashback to the orphanage, maybe just something showing L with Nier and Mello, the trio together at one point, showing that he is sort of this big brother-like person to them. And then when L dies, you think, oh, Nier and Mello are gonna avenge him, instead of L dying and then these new characters coming out of nowhere. That was the frustrating part. I think if it had been set up, much like Light forgetting about the Death Note, if these things had been set up prior, instead of feeling like they were like, you know, came out of nowhere, I think it would have worked so much better. So when Nier finally is there at the end taking down Light, you feel like this was something that L had taught him long ago, that he was truly redeeming L, instead of just this entirely new character who looked like L, taking down Light. But I will say the finale of Death Note made it worth sticking through, because there were parts of the show that I just did not enjoy. There was, I think, 2 episodes in total that I just thought were bad episodes, and I think the show had its writing problems, but the finale delivered, and like, as long as the finale delivers, it can make it feel like the show is either worth watching or not worth watching. I mean, there's bad show finales, I think, like the Game of Thrones finale, that just makes you feeling like, you know, sour about the show, and you just completely forget the show after that finale. But then there's ones like Death Note, like the Death Note finale, that makes me want to rewatch the entire show and see it for a second time, now that I know all the twists and turns are coming. I wanted to watch it this time thinking about L having these 2 little brothers, Mello and Nier, who are gonna one day avenge him. I want to relive those first moments with Ryuk and Light, and then think forward to when Ryuk is writing down Light's name in his Death Note and saying how they ease each other's boredom for a time, but now it's time for Ryuk to move on because Light, you know, his number's up. I want to just, knowing that Light does get caught and gets killed, and, you know, he can never get justice, but some sense of justice, will make me less frustrated watching the show, because I was constantly frustrated on purpose. The show does like to stress you out and make you think that Light's gonna get away with all this. Knowing that he doesn't, I think I could watch the show much more at peace and at ease and not so stressed out the entire time. I think the only storyline of the show retroactively that I still couldn't picture liking, I mean, because I really came to love the Yotsuba stuff, I came to love Nier, I came to really like watching L and Light as friends hanging out and trying to crack this together. The only thing I didn't like was just the storyline of Light's sister being kidnapped. I think that was like 2 episodes long, and I just never felt anything. I didn't even remember Light's sister's name. I still don't. And I remember hating Mikami, and I'm like, oh my god, now a 20th person has the Death Note. Now this is Kira number 20. But after seeing the finale, it makes the Death Note going to Mikami all worth it, to see him write down everyone but not Light's name, and to see how that's the way that Light was, you know, exposed and caught. It made it all worth it. So overall, Death Note, I think it's a beautiful show. It's a dark detective story. It's a show that is just dialogue and conversations and writing with a bit of a horror edge. It has characters that are so fun and entertaining and thrilling to watch. You're just watching these master manipulators. You're watching Light, just an expert at his craft. You're watching L, just a master detective. And you're watching Ryuk eat apples. I love Death Note. I'm a big fan of this show. I think it's honestly become one of my favorite shows of all time now. I can't wait to rewatch it, which I'm gonna start watching it again tonight. And I'm gonna make a video about the movie next, so check that out. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna get out of here, guys. Goodbye.